It's probably my headphones. Hold on.
Yeah.
Headphones. Why can't I change them? Test one, two. Test one, two.
Testing, testing, testing.
Weird. You can hear me though.
Yes, I
Okay.
can.
Odd. Where it's connected. Says it's selected here.
Hmm.
Hmm. I don't know what to do.
Let's
uh,
see. FaceTime, default.
oh me. It won't let me change the headphones speaker. Let's try
Oh, I
this.
think it's because you're recording.
That no, I've got it. I've got it.
You
I
got it?
have two selections, one for headset, one for headphones, and the headset works, headphones doesn't, even though it's the same device. So go figure. Um, and I think we are live streaming. Yes, I think it automatically live streams. So just so you know, even this part, we live stream out to YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn. Um,
Okay, that's good to know.
yeah. So when our whole time when the audio wasn't working, real life, right? Um,
Okay. Well, that's good to get people behind the scenes look at things, right?
that's right. That's right.
It's not
Um,
all just rainbows and unicorns
that's right.
and
That's right.
fluffy bunnies.
This is the first time like I had used Zoom forever for these, but now I
Mm,
switched to River Stream. So you have the honor of being the first one on the River Stream. That's one of the reasons I think we're having problems with the audio, figuring that out.
awesome.
Um, a couple questions for you before we get started officially. Um, how do you pronounce your last name?
Laubscher.
Laubscher. Okay.
Yeah, very, very long-winded Germanic name.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah.
So yeah, basically, I'll go into my spiel to start the official recording. Right, I'll do a short introduction and ask you to do a short introduction of yourself, and then we'll just roll. I've
Perfect.
seen you've been on plenty of these, so it's old hat for you. So
No, I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited.
all right. So I'll do a countdown, and then we'll go from there. Three, two, one. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Profitable Christian Business. I am so happy to have my guest MC Laubscher with me today. He is going to dive into his faith a little bit with us. He's going to also talk about how to become financially free. I think we're going to get on that topic quite a bit. So, um, MC, first question I have for you, because I know everybody that is watching this is curious. What does MC stand for?
So my full name is Michiel Christian Bester Laubscher, and it's the fifth. So it's the fifth board generation with those names in South Africa. So which is where I'm
Wow.
originally from. So yeah, at any given point in time, the firstborn son of every generation gets those names, and at any given point in time, there's three of them alive at the same time, which have been very blessed. So everybody's a nickname. You know, my dad's
Hmm.
nickname is Bucky's, and my grandfather went by Mike, and so I was MC, and my son got the same names, although he was born in the United States. So he's first year, sixth. He's the sixth. With
Wow.
those names, but he just goes by the middle name Christian. So in English, Michiel Christian Bester Laubscher is just Michael Christian Bester Laubscher. So that's what it stands for.
Nice, nice. I don't know if I've ever met anybody that has been the fifth of a name. I've met a few thirds, but never beyond that. So that is pretty awesome that the lineage continues like that.
Yeah, one of our heirlooms, it's pretty cool, is a Bible like from the early 1800s that gets passed down with the oldest
Oh,
son in each generation too. So it's pretty cool. But yeah, it's been a it's an interesting history, you know. Families, they have an origin point, and obviously, you know, my ancestors are from Europe, so
mm,
and I'm an Afrikaner, a Boer. So although the Laubscher is Swiss German, there's also a lot of French and German and Dutch influences in just my culture. So it's yeah, and now it's
Nice.
in the United States.
So you were born in South Africa and then moved to the United States?
Yeah, I was born and raised there. I lived there for most of my life. Actually, if we want to be 100% accurate here with numbers, I have to do the quick math, but it's about 50-50 right now. So I used to say for most of my life, but for accuracy purposes, it's 50-50 now, and actually probably a little bit longer in the States. So I lived there up until, it was about 2001. So I've been here 25 years. Time flies when you're
Nice.
having fun. So I'm doing a lot of math right now in my head.
No,
But
no, nice.
yeah, so I lived there until 2001. So I was about 22 when I left. And yeah, it's came here to the United States. Backpack backpack, a suitcase, a couple of $100, sense of humor, and a sense of adventure, and off
Oh,
we
I love
went.
it. Love it. Love it. I love talking to people that have immigrated from other countries. We're going to dive in. I'm going to ask some questions around that as well. But first, the audience is certainly anticipating, much as I am, to tell us a little bit about yourself, about what you're going to share with us, and just basically more than just that you're from South Africa, more about who you are.
No, I appreciate that. Um, and who am I? So I'll start with just the South African story too, because it kind of ties into what I do
Mm,
and what I'm going to share with the audience. So I grew up in a very interesting time during South Africa's history. So I still remember I was a young man when Nelson Mandela was released from prison.
mm,
We changed forms of government from the apartheid regime over to a different government. We had elections. And I remember what it was like during that time as a young man. There was a lot of uncertainty, a lot of fear. I got to see firsthand the madness of crowds.
mm,
It's interesting of how when you read these things in a book, it doesn't really resonate with you until you see it firsthand. And people could probably relate now after the events of 2020 when you saw
mm.
people get almost in fist fights over toilet paper at grocery stores. That's what
Yeah.
I'm talking about. You people do things that you would never have imagined that they would do because it's survival mode, it's emotions, and of course there's the fear factor, the uncertainty of what the next day is going to bring. And that's really, I mean, it was a gift for me to grow up during that, and I was a young man seeing all of this. And I mean, when it comes into the wealth strategy, wealth building world, I mean, think about the fear, uncertainty,
Mm,
madness of crowds. All these
mhm,
things will directly correlate to that world which I'm in currently. So, as I mentioned, I came here to the United States in 2001. I actually, after university, played sports up until the league of 2007. So I played in a national kind of rugby league.
mm.
And while I was doing that, I just studied, read books. I was the guy on the team bus or team plane, reading business books, instead of playing card games and stuff, watching a movie.
Mhm,
Read a lot of books about finance. And during that time is when I read Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor
mhm,
Dad, which completely changed my paradigm on just what money is, how money
mhm,
works, what wealth is, what's the difference between, the rich dad and the poor dad in the book. It's two completely different worlds. And I mean, I'm very, very curious to be just naturally, but I'm also a truth seeker. So I really just try to study everything I can, but also take action on things that I learn and pick up. So I bought my first investment property 6 months after I read that book. Got some tenants in the investment property, collected rent, and there's money left over at the end of the
mm.
month, so it produced cash flow, just like in the book, right? And of course, if you are a real estate investor or just an entrepreneur, business owner, you'll chuckle because that's when school starts. Really,
Mhm.
shocker. Sometimes a tenant they don't pay rent, they damage your property, and all these different. Oh, both two things at the same time.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, and during that time, I was introduced to interesting people that gave me an insight into the world of family offices, which a family
Mhm.
office is just a private wealth management firm of a particular wealthy family. And I started to see that strategies inside of family offices, what they teach, are completely different than what the financial advice that's given
Mhm.
to the general public or even business owners and entrepreneurs. So I was kind of blown away by this and started to just incorporate some of those strategies on a small scale in my own life. I always say you don't have to be a Rockefeller to do what the Rockefellers do. You
Mhm.
can do similar things on a much smaller scale, and it's going to make massive changes in your own life. um, at that stage too, I had a couple of mentors, and one of my mentors, said that, I was building out a real estate business. I had a couple of other, many other failed ventures that I was a
Mhm.
part of. But he said, MC, you always have to remember you've got to be in two businesses, the business that you're in, and then you have to figure out how to become your own banker and be in the banking
Mhm.
business and incorporate similar banking principles in your own businesses, because that's what they do in these family office structures too. So I started doing that, and I kind of married the real estate investing with becoming your own banker. And then in 2015 I started a company, Producers Wealth, and we were operating virtually. We still do in all 50 states, and technically DC is registered at a separate kind of state for licensing purposes, so 51
Wow.
states. But we just help business owners incorporate these principles of how to become your own bank, how to build your own banking system that positions you, your family, and your business in a very favorable position to benefit from this entire system, instead of being reliant on third parties like banks and financial institutions, which will lend you money when you don't need it, but when you do, it's not that easy. And we do that, like I said, in all 50 states with Producers Wealth. And then I also started a podcast in 2016, so about a year after I started my company, just interviewing my clients at that
Mm.
stage. I was fascinated just with the different ways that people generate income and how they build their businesses and how they invest. And I've continued to interview very interesting business owners and investors on that show. And that got a life of its own. It was just a passion project. So we've been downloaded, in 180 countries, millions of times, with
Wow. Nice.
just, it kind of grew into its own financial education company, just kind of sharing ideas. So it's been a fun ride. And, I'm honored to be on your show and love what you're doing, and been looking forward to our conversation.
Well, awesome, awesome. I had some getting to know you fun questions, but
Yeah.
based on what you said, I just want to kind of dive right into it. We might come back to those, but the first thing I want to ask you is, I think you had said in there that when you came to this country, you had just a few $100s,
Yep.
and so I'm sure there may be business owners just starting out, like, I don't have anything, right? I don't have any capital. So can you kind of go through some of the things, even from a mindset perspective, that you went through from that point that you had, that you're starting with little, that kind of grew you?
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. I think when we think of capital, sometimes the only thing that comes to mind is financial capital. And that's only one of the types of capital
Hmm.
that's out there. Every single one of us, if you think about your life, there's different types of capital that you have that's very, very valuable. So one type, for example, is intellectual, or your skills. So what you
Hmm.
know and what you can do. And sometimes when you don't necessarily have financial capital, but let's just say you were relatively successful in for a while, and something happened. Life happens.
Hmm.
Bad things happen to good people all the time. Um, and you had to start all over again. Well, all that knowledge, all that skill set, that's extremely valuable.
Hmm.
And if you pair it with a second type of capital, relationship capital, now you're back in the game before you know it. So I think when I started, and I was playing rugby, as I mentioned, and the rugby community across the world is pretty incredible. It's a tight knit brotherhood and sisterhood. There's a lot of,
Hmm.
women's rugby is very, very big, and growing just as fast. But yeah, the whole community is very, very tight. So that was one thing that I was fortunate of, not knowing anybody here. not having
Mhm.
met a whole bunch of people, but I knew that was, there was a network that I can access, that would welcome me with open arms. So I started with the relationship capital, and that's kind of, that's the first kind of step that I took, and steps that I took to, to get myself set up in the United States. And then I just started to learn and add skills, and read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki. I met other people in the rugby network, and I was working for, almost for free at one stage, because that's what was taught in the book. The
Mhm.
rich
Mhm.
don't work for money; they work to learn. Because
Mhm.
I did that, doors just started to open up, all of a sudden, and I started to learn things that were very valuable for other people. I'll give an example, because I like to back things up sometimes when I share the, just kind of like a concept, but I was interested in real estate. I took action. I read that book, took action, and then I was introduced to someone else that also was in the real estate world. And he's like, "Oh, so you're interested in real estate?" I said, "Actually, I just bought one of my properties." He's like, "Oh, you already okay." So he knew I was serious. And at that stage, I was looking for just some extra work too while I was pursuing my career in sports. And he's like, we own a ton of real estate. If you're interested, I could put you to work if you're in town. At that stage, I'm like, awesome. Where can I start? I started picking up trash on multifamily
Mhm.
buildings, right? That's where
Mhm.
I started. And eventually that led into doing maintenance tasks around multifamily buildings. And then that turned into joining a construction crew, turning over apartments, eventually running construction crews, eventually going into the office, becoming part of the property management team, managing 500 plus units myself, getting a broker's license, getting involved. But it all started with picking up trash, just on the property. And I can tell you now, having been a real estate investor for 25 years now, when I drive past a multifamily property, I know exactly what goes on there. No, exactly. I know what happens during the week, during the day, during the evenings, what happens on the weekends, what type of complaints there will be, who showed up on the weekend, whether it's an ambulance or the police, or I kind of have an idea of what goes on there. And I wouldn't have known that had I not just started somewhere, right? So I would also say your enthusiasm and
Mhm.
your relishing opportunities that don't necessarily reveal themselves as an opportunity, that's another source of capital right there. And because capital is something that is valuable to
Mhm.
people, and I think there's a lot of people that wouldn't do that today, right?
Yeah, I hear a lot of biblical stuff in what you just said too. The whole working as whatever you're doing it unto the Lord, right?
Yep.
And just doing it to the best of your ability, no matter what it is. And that sounds like that's exactly what you did. And you just did the next thing to your next ability, the next thing to the best of your ability, and you got noticed, and you started to build this relation. People started noticing you, and it's like,
Yep.
this is a hard worker. This this guy knows his stuff, right?
Yep. Yeah, and
So.
it's serving too. It's coming from a place
Mhm.
of service, and if you lead with that in business, I mean, that's already a differentiator right there. Instead
Yeah.
of just lead with service, and try to help, because at the core of it, if you think about it, being an entrepreneur and being a business owner is a very soulful experience,
Mhm.
because you help people solve problems. And there's a lot of problems, number one, and there's a lot of extremely painful problems that people have. And if you become a person of value by solving those problems in the marketplace. So yeah, it's very, very soulful. And especially if it comes from a place of service. There if you I mean, I've met incredible entrepreneurs in my lifetime and business owners, but a lot of them had that characteristic too.
Mhm.
And especially, if you think about that service part, and serving without really expecting anything back. How this works, and how, how the world works. Eventually that comes back 10,
Yep.
100 fold.
Yep.
So
Yep. It's back to faith, right? You just have to have faith that everything is going to work out for your good, because you're doing what God has to, uh, uh, prompted you to do, right?
yeah.
So I want to circle back to a little bit about the relationship capital, because that is something that we talk a lot about in our business with our clients. Is like, that is a cornerstone. If we could teach you, we could teach you strategies and all these kind of things all day, but knowing how to build relationships is so key in growing a business. A lot of people don't make the progress that they want to make because they're not making the right connections. And I think there's a lot of this fear mentality, is like, block doors. I can't get in a room with those people, right? But that is most often a misnomer. Most of the time, those people are looking for help, bring other people up.
Yep.
That's just fear in your head. If you just want to talk about that a little bit.
It happened to me. So when one of the other things that I did too, this was before, I mean, yes, the internet was taking off, but I was a little slow to that too. But there used to be these, and they're still today, they're still around, all these real estate meetups and meet. I mean, now it's, you literally have a website just dedicated to it. Shameless plug, which I have nothing to do with them, but meet up, right? But back in the day too, you had to look for them in the papers, and maybe there was, people that knew of it, local real estate groups. And that's exactly what happened to me. I went to some of those and I was so nervous. And I'm like, I don't know anything. I read a couple of books, and at some stage I took action and bought a property. And in my own head, I was probably thinking these people are probably going to laugh at me, if they realize how little I know and that I bought real estate. They're probably like, oh, this is going to end bad for this young fella over here. But there was someone that also then took me under his wing, because they were looking for someone that is excited, is driven, do what they say and say what they do. They're in alignment, and coachable, teachable, and I mean, I didn't realize it at that stage, but it's the joy of giving back, and that's what that person had too, because I didn't have much to give them at that stage, and I was trying to figure out, what is it kind of in it for them, and then I started to realize the big picture, the big game, and how this all works, and giving back, and how that person had an incredible journey, and he's still on his, but he's seeing someone young and up and coming that he feels like, all right, this person's got potential. I can help them out. And, I'm extremely grateful for that. And it was the same thing. R. Nelson Nash was one of my mentors. He wrote the book, Becoming Your Own Banker, kind of the same thing, where folks just look at people that are, coachable. They are willing to listen and put in the work, and, they try to lift them up. So yeah, I can't say enough about that. I mean, one of the things that I learned too, and this also came from a mentor, was when people when they're looking to increase their finances, for example, try to increase their financial capital. They focus so much on that, but yet if you look at the formulas, your intellectual capital times your relationship capital will lead to more financial capital. If you're focusing just on the financial capital, it's not going to happen. But if you increase the other two, then all of a sudden it's just a cause and effect there of that. You will have that eventually. But relationships, mentorships, I mean, it's incredible. This relationship capital is incredible. So we talk a lot about different types of capital, because the financial piece is just one piece.
Yeah. I know, and I'm sure it's the same for you. When I give, whether it's my knowledge or monetarily, it fulfills me probably even more so than it fulfills because it just gives me so much joy inside.
Yep.
So that's why people that have made some steps in their life to progress themselves want, kind of like you alluded to, want to do that, is because it not only, they know that they're helping you, but it helps them so much in their soul.
Right. They're acting at that stage within their purpose, right? And your purpose kind of changes as you go on to your journey. And towards the end, it's more of, how do they live and leave a legacy at that point, right? It
Hmm.
really that becomes a purpose. So how do I do that? Well, I got to touch as many people as I can, as far as like uplifting them and helping
Hmm.
them and do something of value for them. So yeah, no, your purpose just kind of changed. It's funny. I was reflecting on my journey too. When I first came to the United States and first got started, your purpose at that stage is like, well, I probably just don't want to end up on the street somewhere, right? I don't
Yep.
want to be homeless.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
your why at that stage. And then it
Yep.
kind of like your why starts to change as you progress, and eventually, you get married, you have a family, and now, your whys is your family, right? And
Yeah.
eventually it becomes, you think even bigger and bigger, to your point, what I just mentioned, to live and leave your legacy. So yeah, they're acting within their purpose at that point.
One thing, and this can probably take us back into the financial piece, is compounding effect, right? They know that if they're pushing, delivering their knowledge to you, it's going to have a compounding effect on the people that you touch, and then they touch. So the same things work in finances, right? So um, I don't know if you want to touch on that a little bit. If not, I'll go right into the fill in the blank
No,
question.
I absolutely will. You know, it's that book too by James Clear, The Atomic Habits. The small things that you do over time. Oh, you got them back there. That's great. Yeah, we're on the same page. That compounding, because people just think about money, compounding money, and we all have
Mhm.
heard the quotes. I don't want to bore you with that. Oh, it's the eighth wonder in the world, and it's an Einstein quote allegedly, but we all have heard those before. Yet in other areas of our life, we don't apply those. And I will say this too: if you think big picture, we talk about mentorship and relationship capital. Big picture too is the long term thinking that a lot of wealthy individuals that I've met have. I mean, the mentality and the paradigm shift is they will plant trees, the seeds of trees under which they will never ever get to sit. And
Mhm.
that's part of this living and leaving your legacy bet, is like you're planting this seed right now. You're never going to sit under that tree, but somebody else is going to enjoy it in the future, and you've left the world a better place.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. So the fill in the blank question that
Yeah.
we do on every one of these podcasts is: entrepreneurship to me is all about blank and blank.
Yeah. It's a personal development
Mm.
journey, and resilience is what I would say.
Ooh, yeah.
It literally is, and I won't say it's a free personal development course,
No,
because
no,
that's not free, but
no.
it's just a journey of personal development, discovering yourself, losing yourself, rediscovering yourself, finding your way back. And again, you know it's definitely not for the faint hearted, I would say.
Nope.
And I think, like, you have to have a very very strong why, and you have to be resilient. Resilience is a characteristic. I'm trying to teach my children that too, and I coach both of their little league teams. So my
Mhm.
daughter's on the softball team, my son's on the little
Nice.
league baseball team, and that's one of the things that I teach them, to never to give up. And by the way, those sports are so good for that too, because if you think about, just baseball in general, if you hit 3 out of 10 balls at bats, like, you're in the Hall of Fame, right?
Yep.
So actually, for the most part, you're going to fail, and I feel like that's been my entrepreneurial journey too,
Mhm.
as a business owner. That I would say, 70-80% of the time, of everything that I tried did not work, but
Yep.
that 20 to 30% has really made the difference. And it's just, it's back to the thinking of, like, how I've got to figure this out. And I think if you don't stop, if you don't give up, and you just keep going,
Mhm.
like, eventually, and I know this sounds so cliche-ish, and if you're listening to this, you're probably like, you know, pulling a face, but I can tell you, if if you just don't give up. A coach of mine said this the one time too. He said, "You know who the most dangerous player on a sports field is? It's not the fastest guy. It's not the strongest guy. It's not the smartest, strongest, and fastest guy. It's actually the guy or girl that refuses to give up."
Hmm.
They're very tough to play against. Look at
Yep.
Tom Brady, a guy,
Yep.
that just refused to give up, and just was very resilient. So yeah, personal development and resilience, I would say, is a big, big theme for me when it comes to entrepreneurship and business.
I love that you denoted the equation of failure to success, because I think a lot of starting entrepreneurs just don't see that or don't get that at the beginning.
Yep.
They may fail a couple times and like, okay, this isn't for me. Well,
Yep.
it's not for you because you haven't played the odds right yet.
That's right. Right. And there's a lot of things that come with this too, right? Um, in the beginning, I mean, let's just say it out loud because people would be thinking this. You do when you start out, you you're kind of still you're kind of still in that world where you're like, how is this going to look? Like, how many times am I going to fail? You kind
Mhm.
of still do think what other people think. Eventually, you're like, by the fifth or sixth, thing that didn't make it, you're like, I don't at this stage, I don't really, I don't care what anybody else is thinking at that point. You're just focused on yourself and your purpose and trying to trying to just keep going, right? But yeah, it's not going to happen. If it happens the first time, I would actually be scared. If I do something, for the
Yes.
first time and that's a massive success, I would actually be very, very nervous about that.
Yeah. A couple things about that. Let's circle back to the why,
Yep.
because again, let's talk about how most people think in the beginning. I want to start a business because I want to make money. Guess what? That's
Yes.
not going to get you very far.
Nope. Nope. Not at all.
um, and the I lost my train of thought on the last thing you said there. Um, I had a great comment on it. Oh well, I guess we'll just move forward. Um, but yeah, you're not, if your why is focused on money or material things, you're going to burn out really quickly. You're going to hit the overwhelm mark, right? And you're like,
Yep.
oh, it's not worth it.
Yeah. It's
So,
got to be it's got to be deeper, and it's got to be a stronger one, and it's got to be non-monetary
hmm.
related. It is actually, if you think about what and there's producers and consumers in this world, right? And that comes back to the soulful experience and also biblical
Hmm.
principles of building the kingdom here on earth. And if you're part of the builders, one of the things that we always say in our family, it's like we want to be builders, not breakers, because you
Hmm.
have them. You have builders, breakers, and you got consumers.
Yep.
So the big thing is like, what do you want to build? And then that
Hmm.
ties into, well, what problems do people have that they want to solve? I
Hmm.
think those are sustainable business models. Yeah,
Yeah.
we have Shark Tank on TV and people talk about gadgets or, hey, this would be a really cool idea or a cool product or little widget or something. But it's like, what is that actually solving? Is it
Hmm.
is it solving a problem for someone? How painful is that problem? Is it trying to get them closer to a desirable outcome? Or where does it kind of fit in? So I would just say it's got to be much bigger. You've got to have a
Hmm.
mission. It's got to be mission driven. You got to be passionate about it, and you got to have an extremely strong why, because those long nights and early mornings and, I mean, blood, sweat, and tears.
Yep.
It's going to be tough to get through that if it was just another cool widget that got you into this.
Yep. That why helps you with that resilience, right?
Yes, and I mean, like, being an immigrant too. Like, one of the things is you can't give up.
Right.
It's got to, you have a different mentality too, where it's like, your backup plan is you you have to go back to where you came from, or you're homeless here. So yeah, you just got to keep going, especially if you don't have a net to fall back on, a
Can,
safety net, right?
can we talk about that? Because that's when at the top of the interview, that's kind of where I wanted to go for a second anyway,
Yeah.
was when you talked about being from South Africa, the cultural differences and just I've had other people on the show, and I have friends personally that have been immigrants, and the, I feel like the speed to success is sometimes much faster with people that immigrate,
Yep.
because they, as Americans, we become very comfortable, right? And we have these blinders on. We don't really know what it's like in other parts of the world. So if you
Right.
could just speak on that a little bit.
I will tell you this. This is a great question, by the way. When I came to the United States in 2001, and it's still like that today, I looked at the United States and America, and I looked at all the people, and I thought to myself, did you guys and girls realize that you won the lottery? Like just by being born here, you
Mhm.
already won the lottery. And then it's incredible of how depressed people are and how they complain. I'm like, you want to see depression and bad stuff? Come with me to Africa, just like
Mhm.
for a day or two, and I'll go show you stuff that will make you really depressed and sad. So yeah, I think like that. That's the big, the mentality when you come here and you look at just how society is set up too, where there's so much upward mobility here.
Mhm.
That's another thing I don't think Americans realize or they take for granted, where you can start anywhere in this country. It doesn't matter where you're born, like your economic kind of like a rung of the ladder, for
Mhm.
lack of better way of putting it or phrasing it. But I mean, there's nothing holding you back. You could come up with ideas, and you have access to things that most people at the bottom rung on an economic ladder in their society couldn't even dream of.
Mhm.
Damon John the one time said, and he was born in the projects in New York, where he's like, he could go to the local library and even like, access everything that was available back then in the public library. Now there's a lot of people that they don't have access to that. They're just trying to survive
Mhm.
and just figure out where food's going to come from for the day, right? That's very tough to dream too. It's very, very tough to dream when you wake up in a shanty town, let's just say
Mhm.
in Africa, and you get up every day. Where here you wake up, I mean, because you've got a lot of things in place already structurally.
Mhm.
you, you're in the position to dream, right? If your basic necessities are taken care of, you've got a roof over your head, you've got a house that's warm, you've got clothes, and you've got a belly that's full. Yeah, now you can dream. Now you can do certain things. So yeah, I would say from an immigrant's perspective, the ability to come here with your best ideas and do things and build incredible things and build an incredible life for yourself and your family, is unbelievable. And that's why so many immigrants come here and they thrive, because they're like, I'm not complaining. I'm here. I
Yep.
could be,
Yep.
insert country here, back there. So, it's fascinating. Somebody actually shared with me other day, there was a Forbes list also of millionaires and now billionaires of immigrants in the United States. And that list is getting pretty long. And of course, a lot of them are in the news recently, even a billionaire from South Africa, Elon
Yep.
Musk. But it's a completely different mentality. And I would also say culturally, yeah, I mean, South Africa too. So and I'm an Afrikaner, so a Boer, as some people call us. So we're very religious. We're farmers. Our
Mm.
communities are very tight. Um, Very conservative by nature too. There's a South African joke when the era of enlightenment happened in Europe and all these new ideas started to spread. Most of the Afrikaners were hunting elephants and chasing lions and that kind of stuff. So they really didn't get involved with that. But yeah, so I think culturally too, and it's just living in purpose and in just in service and trying to build and help other people and build your business.
Nice, nice. Now, I know we're like halfway through the interview already, but we're going to get to talk about what you do so well. So, our secret question is: what is the secret to business owners changing the trajectory of wealth for their family?
Yeah, so a big thing with business owners that I've seen is that they are very, very good of generating income, and they crush it. And that's a very good skill to have, by the way. The second piece of that is, how do you protect it, and how then do you multiply that capital? And that's actually a different skill set. People think that they're the same thing, but there's a lot of very successful entrepreneurs and business owners that will keep coming up with ideas and products and services and keep helping folks, but never ever step just away from the business. Just step outside of it, look at it big picture and say, okay, We got to do a couple of things here with some planning, get some structures in place, especially when it comes to financial planning and wealth planning, and tax planning, and having proper asset protection and estate planning and so forth in place. That's where a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners drop the ball, because that's a completely different world, which any business owner, unless you're in the tax business itself, how much fun is it to sit down with a bookkeeper or a tax strategist and talk about your books and taxes, right? It's just not, what entrepreneurs and business owners are into. But that's one of the most important parts. So that's the biggest thing holding them back, and following terrible advice. As I mentioned before, in the beginning of our discussion, that a lot of information that's out there, financial advice, mainstream financial advice, that's for the general public, is terrible advice for entrepreneurs and business owners. I'll give you an example of what I mean. So when you start your business, unless you come from a wealthy family or you had a rich uncle or aunt, most of us are all in, in our business, because we have to be, right? Especially if you're bootstrapping it. So it's you're all in, and at that stage, you look like a broke person on a financial statement to pretty much everybody, financial planners, CPAs, attorneys, and so forth, because you're all in. You have to be. You keep grinding and working, and it's late nights, blood, sweat, tears. Eventually, this thing has life. You're not going bankrupt, and it's not another failure. It's off the ground. And now you keep grinding and keep plugging away, and eventually the business becomes profitable. And now you start to grow this business, and it starts to grow really quick. Well, now you are very attractive, and a perfect client for a lot of financial planners and CPAs and attorneys and so forth. Well, now you have a sit down, and what's the first piece of advice they actually give you? A financial planner at that stage. Say, business owner, you've done really, really well. You've grown this business really well. It's time that we diversify outside of your business. So I'm going to take some of the money, that take it off the table, and I'll put it in stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. So what happened just there is that you lost control of the money that which you've been generating. You've given it to someone else, and they've taken that and invested that in someone else's business. I always give this example: Apple products. Everybody has them these days. I'm on a MacBook as we're recording this. Tim Cook and Apple doesn't need my money for liquidity to grow their business. Your own business does, right? So you lose control over the money and you hand it over. And then the second big challenge that you then run into, and most business owners know this, and is cash flow management. I talk about the 4 seasons of cash flow. Summer season of cash flow, your highest revenue month. All business owners, which month that is of yours. Winter, lowest. So summer, pretty easy to run a business. Very, very easy to run your business. And then it starts to slow down. It goes into the fall. Fall goes into the winter, your lowest revenue month. Most of your overheads are still the same as it was in summer, as it is in winter. And now all of a sudden, another problem arises besides the cash flow management. Well, where do you get other money just now to reinvest in the business? A new marketing campaign, investing in technology, and so forth, to get you from the winter into the spring and back into the summer. Well, we all end up at a banking institution, a bank or a financial institution, getting a line of credit or getting a loan or, overdraft kind of like vehicle just to run the business and just to get money to invest in the business. In that case, if you look at that scenario, everybody else profits from that system, which you unknowingly have set up as a business owner, except you. Everybody's doing great. The financial planner's doing great. The banks are doing great, and so forth. So, the things that we teach in that case is, the big thing, and this is a switch too, is if you ask a business owner too, where their best investment is, it's in themselves and their business. But yet I get phone calls. You won't believe it. People that are absolutely crushing it. And they're like, should I be investing in real estate? And I'm thinking, I'm like, you you like doubled your company in 8 months. Like, what are you talking about? Like, you should just be doing what you're doing right now,
Yeah.
right? So what we teach too, and what we help folks with, and this is where infinite banking comes in, is how do you structure a system that benefits you, doing all these different things for you. So yes, you should at some stage diversify out of your business, but how do you diversify out of your business without losing control of the capital and now starving your business from it? So
Mhm.
one of the things that you can do is you could set up infinite banking. It's structured with very specifically designed insurance products, but it's a banking system that you create. Now you position money in this vehicle outside of your business. It's outside of the business itself, so you've diversified. Number one. Number two, you can access that money at any given point in time to be the bank to your business, to manage cash flow, use it to invest in the business for marketing campaigns, technology, hire other different folks. And of course, from a business succession planning, because it is a life insurance vehicle, you now have a business succession plan in place. And of course, you can scale this system to a family banking system where you have many, many different of these policies, these infinite banking design policies, as part of your family bank. And you can put it in a trust. And now the trust becomes the primary financial lender, the institution, to you and your business. So, and who gets the benefit from all of this? I'll finish, this example with an example quick here. My business needed some money in the beginning of this year. Great. We hired some employees. We brought in some technology. So we went to our family bank through our trust. We applied for a loan. It's all above board. We got a loan from our family trust, which is from this infinite banking system. My business got the loan, so we have a note, we have interest that we were paying back to the family trust. We got to use the money to hire employees, bring in technology, run a marketing campaign. The business is growing because of that, and the business is repaying the family trust, the principal and interest. And of course, the family trust is making a profit, and the money in those insurance contracts is still growing uninterrupted with compound interest, tax-free, guaranteed every single year. So it's just, we've all heard this. Let's work hard and smart,
Mhm.
but also if you can position a couple of things, be as efficient as possible. And this is just setting up a system which you're already using for your benefit, where, as my mentor told me, R. Nelson Nash, MC, you got to be in the business that you're in, and you have to be in the banking business. And now you're in both.
Yeah. Wow. Awesome. I think you covered all the questions in that one answer that I had. Like, one of the questions was, what's a wealth building strategy you wish every Christian business owner know? And I'm sure it's infinite banking.
it's and let's take this to another level quick, right? I always say to folks, because we all have these conversations sometimes about, how crazy the world is, right? But I always say, look, if it's not intentionally, we voted for all of this, right? And
Mhm.
it's not going to a voting booth and closing a curtain and voting for a particular person. It's with our money. And most Christians are very good with this. They're very intentional, right? They give to their church, they tithe, they support local businesses, they do all these different things, that is really in alignment. But there's one missing piece, and this is, I did a whole content piece where I called it "Coming Clean," because I
Mhm.
realized this, and I'm like, wait a second, where am I banking? Where am I?
Mm.
Where's some of my capital position, and what institutions with? And if you go down this and you do kind of like an audit with yourself too, you're like, wait a second, these people are like, well, not people, these organizations and institutions are doing things that are completely opposite to what I believe in and what I stand for.
Mhm.
So what are some of the solutions to rectify it? When you have a system like this, instead of, putting money in a Vanguard or a BlackRock ETF or something like that, how about you use a banking system to support a local business in your community,
Mhm.
in your business community, that's looking for capital. So you could be, and you could structure it very, very favorable so that it's a win-win for everybody. So now you've kind of freed them. So they are not dependent just on the outside system and other banks and institutions, and you've actually kept the money inside of your community. So it becomes very, very powerful, this stuff. Um, if, and this happens all the time, you can make capital investments too. Another example of someone diversifying within their business in our community network is the business owner had the system set up. They ended up using it to buy the building from which they operated, and
Mm,
there's 3 other tenants in there. So that's diversification too. You're in the banking business, now you're in the real estate, and your business is operating from there, and there's 3 other tenants. So now you've kept it in the community too, local, right?
yep.
So yeah, it's an incredible strategy where you keep the control and you actually can directly invest in things that you're aligned with and that you are, that's within your purpose.
Yeah, I've heard that often. That if your business is in a physical location, you should strive to own that building that your business is in.
Right. Right. And I mean, at that stage, just through education and sharing these strategies, and a rising tide lifts all boats. Eventually, hey, the 3 or 4 tenants buy the building together, and
Yep.
now everybody's got a stake in the building, which their business are. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot. I mean, the opportunities is endless.
And I just think about that, and then there's an offshoot of that of like we would need to make sure this community is as healthy as it possibly can be because the healthier the community, the more our business thrives.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you keep the capital in the community, and I've seen this firsthand. By the way, too, I've got some great friends in the Amish and the Mennonite community too, and they keep a lot of that
Mhm.
inside of their community. And I can
Mhm.
tell you that is extremely wealthy families and communities
Mhm.
right there. And I'm not just talking about financial wealth. It's just
Yeah.
very realistic. Where again, tight relationships. Everybody's got each other's back. It's a very
Mhm.
tight community. Everybody supports each other. Most of the farms and those houses are all paid off with
Mhm.
money inside of that community pool. I mean, that's really how you become a very resilient community.
Yeah, I've also heard the concept of I know a lot of people are moving to this like family compounds.
Yep.
Like the whole family owns the real estate next to this house is my sister, this house is my brother, this house
Yep.
is my mom, and it's a family and they own all that real estate in that one area.
Yeah. 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 No, it becomes fun.
Yeah, yeah. Let's shift a little bit to spiritual before we wrap up here.
Yep.
Is there a biblical truth about money that most believers are completely missing and it's costing them? If so, what is that?
You know, that's a great question. One of the things that I think about too that sometimes we see, especially with Christians, is it's almost like you hear the root of root of evil is money and so forth,
Hmm.
and there's a lot of scarcity kind of like
Mm,
thinking. But if you actually think about it, and if you embrace this concept of being a steward of
hmm.
wealth and being one of the builders of the kingdom you're on earth, all of a sudden it's like, wait a second. Well, I'm actually given these amazing abilities and skill sets to create wealth and
Hmm.
then be a steward and multiply, right? Be fruitful and multiply.
Yep.
That's abundance right there. So I would say that's the big part. And I mean, like, there's so many examples of this. If you think about the parable of the talents, right?
Hmm.
It's just, you know, um, the one who multiplies down didn't get rebuked, right?
That's right.
So you got there's so many examples just in the Bible of exactly this, of like, if you're a good steward and you multiply, that's actually what God wants you to do. And again, as I mentioned, kind of the big thing is that the mindset from scarcity
Hmm.
to abundance, which there is plenty of it.
Hmm.
I think that's a massive switch that when you make that and start to take that steward mentality and vision of being a steward of protecting and multiplying it while you're here, because it benefits everybody, and you're one of the builders of this kingdom. I don't think people are going to feel. I don't want to use the word ashamed, but you know what I mean. Like sometimes when
Yeah.
you see incredible
Yeah.
successful
Guilt.
people,
Like they have some guilt towards it.
that's the word I'm looking for. Yes.
Yeah.
So there's some
Uh,
guilt, and it's like you shouldn't be. You're being a great steward, building this kingdom. You're on earth, using your talents and helping as all these people. So I
yeah.
think that's one of the things that I would
Yeah.
share.
Business owners create abundance, right? You think of products that had never been seen before. So a
Yes.
business owner created that, and now there's jobs for that wouldn't have been there before. It's amazing, and I think people take that one little verse out of the Bible that money is the root of. It's the love. Let's
Yep.
not let's not forget. It says the love
The,
of money is the
the
root of all
love of
evil.
money.
When
Yep.
when you put money as your idol above God, then it is the root of all evil. But there are so many other verses in the Bible. A wise man leaves an inheritance, right? There's so many verses in the Bible that is not against wealth.
It's actually, and there's some great podcasts out there that actually, like, Myron Golden is a person that actually talks about this, that
Hmm.
it's actually a guide to building wealth. If you
Hmm.
if you look at it through a different lens with a different perspective, you're going to see that, oh, there's actually a blueprint here for me to
Yep.
be a good steward and to
Yep.
multiply and to serve and to increase the experience and better the lives of everybody around me. So yeah, I think that's one of the things is the scarcity and the love of money, which is the root of evil. Yeah, it's yeah, that's
Well,
what I would say.
this has been amazing. I know a lot of this stuff. Like I've had plenty of guests on here to talk about a lot of these things, so I've learned a lot of these things. But every time I get a fresh perspective with what you've shared, I know the audience is getting a lot of value out of this. I so appreciate you, and I'd like to call you a friend now. I know we just met, but
This is great. No, I
uh,
appreciate it.
um, where can people find out more about what you do?
So producerswealth.com, producerswealth.com is my company website. And I've got a book currently out, Get Wealthy for Sure, which is
Nice.
as opposed to the get rich quick, get
Yep.
wealthy for sure, the discipline and resilient way of building wealth. And I call it the number one financial strategy for business owners to multiply wealth. And what we're doing right now is we're giving away a free paperback copy. You just pay for shipping and handling. So if your listeners and viewers want to grab a copy of Get Wealthy for Sure, just request it from my team. They can go to getwealthyforsure.com. That's getwealthyforsure.com.
I'm gonna make sure to grab the book, and I will probably get some to give as gifts because well, that's one of my favorite things to give as a gift is a good book, right?
Yeah.
So I'm sure that would be one that I'd love to give away to either some of our guests or some of our clients. Um, and so thank you again. I do have one last question that I ask every single person that comes on, and that's because I don't want to leave any stone unturned.
Yep.
So the last question is, what wisdoms you have to pass on to anyone that is watching that you may have already covered?
That is, that's a great question. I would just say that we talked about the one wisdom. If I have to go back 20 20 years, to my 20-year-old self, so I'm framing it that way, is that just to embrace the journey.
Mm,
Embrace the journey, because it's not going up in a straight line. It's
mm-mm,
going to be rocky. It's going to be roller coaster. And sometimes when I reflect on my life right now I laugh. I wish at that
mm-hmm,
stage too, if I know what I know now, I would have just said, okay, this is just part of the journey. Let's embrace
mm-hmm,
that. Let's embrace that. I know I shared that I coach my kids with sports too. I actually have taught them to embrace striking out. Like, go
mm,
and have fun striking out. Well, what does that mean? It means you step up, you give your best, and you're swinging at it. You're not fearful. You're giving it your
mm-hmm.
all, and embrace it, because 7, 8 out of 10 times you're actually going to strike out.
Yep.
But that 1 or 2 or 3 times that you're going to connect, that ball's going to fly, and that's going to be
Mm-hmm.
the hit of your life. So embrace the journey, and just don't be afraid of striking out, and I know when people hear this, they're going to be like, easy for you to say, but have fun in the process, because it's embrace the journey, embrace the process. If you don't give up and you're resilient, I can tell you this: you're gonna have an amazing life, and you're gonna build the life that you dream of, and that isn't within your purpose here, on God's kingdom.
Love that. I do have one comment on that, just to ask you a kind of a follow-up question. Do you feel like we're talking about the ups and downs of the entrepreneur journey? Do you feel like you would be where you are if it wasn't for the downs?
Oh no. Oh no.
No, because they help mold you, right?
That is, the reason why I am where I am right now is because of all the failures, the tragic failures, the humiliating failures. I thank you for pointing that out, because there's no way I would be where I'm at right now if it wasn't for the downs. And the downs are terrible, but I can tell you, that's why I call it a personal development journey. It's rock bottom is a college education, as they say.
Because I wanted to really pinpoint on that word embrace that you were saying, because it's hard when you're in the down to think of how do I embrace this, but just know that it's molding you into the person that God wants you to become.
Yes.
So yep. So thank you again, MC. This has been wonderful. And until next time, entrepreneurs, keep moving forward.